Welcome aboard FreeDive with C Digital, your go-to podcast for deep dives into the world of digital marketing. I'm Kristy.
And I'm Annalyn.
Your hosts navigating through the currents of growth, strategy, and innovation in the digital realm.
We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. It's going to be a good time.
Let's dive in.
So I'm getting ready to be on this podcast, and I'm here with my friend Kristy. I don't know if you can hear her voice in the background, but she is a distinct human being here. Say hi to Kristy.
Hi, Kristy.
Hello.
Nice to sort of meet you.
Nice to sort of meet you.
So this podcast we're going to talk about AI. Let's pretend you're the interviewer, though, for a moment, okay?
Got it. I'll be the interviewer.
So you're an interviewer on a podcast, and you're going to take Kristy's job so we can let her go.
All right. Stepping into the interviewer role. If AI were to write a soap opera, what kind of wild plot twists and characters might it come up with?
Ooh. Is it in Spanish or English?
Let's say it's in English. What do you think?
I think it's going to be about somebody who gets a brain tumor, but then they find out that it's actually the person's identical twin, and that person's identical twin has also been using AI art to catfish his ex-wife.
Oh.
Wow. That is a twisty plot. An identical twin with a secret AI art scheme. That's a soap opera I'd tune into. Let's try another one. If AI were to design an amusement park, what kind of outrageous rides and attractions might it create?
Wow. That is a good one. I would say that they would have a ride called the GTP, and you don't know where it's going to go once you get in it, because then AI, based on your emotional reaction, sends you in different pathways.
Ooh. It's a horror movie, actually.
That sounds equal parts thrilling and terrifying. If you could live in any fictional universe for a year, but you had to work a mundane job while there, which universe would you choose, and what job would you do?
Ooh. I think I would go to Star Trek, and then I would have to be like a janitor on a spaceship.
Star Trek is a fantastic choice. Even as a janitor, you'd get to explore strange new worlds, encounter diverse species, and witness incredible technology in action. Plus, you never know when you might be called upon to save the day. Ready for another question?
Yes.
Or need a moment? Okay, here's another one. If you could invent a new holiday, what would it celebrate, and how would people commemorate it?
I think I would create the day after the Super Bowl as a holiday, and everybody got it off because everyone's up late that night before anyways. So if you made it like a holiday weekend where everyone got the day off from the Super Bowl, I think it would be very popular.
That would be a hugely popular holiday. Super Bowl Monday would give everyone a chance to recover from the big game, and it would turn Super Bowl Sunday into an even bigger celebration. Great idea.
But here we are talking about AI today, Kristy.
Welcome back to another episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the FreeDive Podcast.
Today. You know what I was thinking? I was just thinking, it's funny how limited that is on asking inappropriate stuff. The filters that are on it to prevent it from asking anything too freaky.
Yes.
And I, a while ago, saw TikToks where some girl figured out how to break the filters to get it. And she went through this whole tutorial of how to get it to actually break the filters. And you can do it. Do you want to do it? I don't know. But
I do think it would be fascinating to get some type of AI without political correctness filters.
Is that ChatGPT?
That was ChatGPT.
How did you get it to have that voice?
So that's the native app, the native ChatGPT app, and then there's like 6-7 voices that you can use.
Because in my ChatGPT app, I
guess
maybe I instructed it what voice I wanted.
I think you may have. Are you using the official one, or are you using like a third-party one that's overlaying its own voices?
It's just ChatGPT.
Oh yeah, you're using the right one. Yeah.
Oh. So do you go back to the same chat every time so that it knows your personality, or does it start over?
Well, here's the interesting thing I've discovered recently, because ChatGPT, it's like, oh, open up a new chat, right?
Yeah.
For everything.
Yeah.
And I weirdly experienced this where I said, we were talking about something, and I forget exactly what I was asking it about, and I was like, can you expound on number 2? And it just like stopped, and it says number 2, and it like spit out something about my personal life, not about what we were talking about.
From in the chat you were already in?
From the chat I was in, but unconnected to anything we were talking about. It just was like, you live in York, Maine. And I was like, hold up. Like, that's not what we're talking about. And then so I asked it, I'm like, are you storing information about me?
Yeah.
And it said, yes. And it says, and I was like, what do you know about me? And it's like, here are 10 things. And it listed off like 10 things about chats that I've had. And one of them was like, I had jokingly, I think had like made a chat that I was joking around that Kristy was my boss in the chat. Like, and I was like role playing a situation, like would I talk to my boss about something or something along that line. And so when I asked it, I was like, what are the things you know about me? And it's like, you work at C Point Digital and Kristy is your boss. So it was like stuff that I was like thought exercising with it, not thinking that it was like actually like remembering and actually being like about me.
But it was in the same chat.
But it was in completely different chat. I opened up.
Oh, that's extra weird.
Well, do it. Open up your chat, GTP.
Well, like I have asked it in the past, like new chats. It was like you all are always going to have to ask me things within this chat if you want me to remember this information about you.
So
otherwise, I'll forget.
I think it's lying to you because open up a brand new chat, right?
Okay. Yep.
And ask it, what are 10 things that you know about me?
Oh, it looks different now because
They may have upgraded the app.
It looks like yours now.
Yeah.
What are 10 things that you know about me? I'm scared. I don't want to put this on the podcast.
You need to be scared.
Shh. Don't put it on before I know that it puts it publicly. What are 3 things you know about me? But here's the thing.
Oh, no, you should just do it on the voice. You should just go back to the voice and ask it 10 things to know about you. I would just love... We can edit in post-production if it says anything too personal. You're like... It goes, you have a great loathing for your boss.
What? Okay, here's a good one. Because in the past I've talked to it about, hey, Jax, what do I do for work?
Hey, you haven't mentioned what you do for work yet. Want to fill me in? I'd love to hear about it.
Hey, Jax, tell me 5 things about Kristy.
I'm sorry, but I don't know anything about Kristy yet. Is she someone important to you?
See.
Ask me 5 things about me. Tell me 5 things about me.
Tell me 5 things about me.
Got it, Jax. Whenever you're ready, feel free to share more about Kristy.
No, it's just confused.
No,
Because that's a new chat. So, do you think it's because you have a paid version?
Oh, maybe it's because I got the paid version.
See, that's not even the right voice for Jax.
No, maybe they
Did you name yours?
I did not. Mine just gave me like names. Though, watch this. Let's see if it wasn't working a second ago, but let's see. Just want to ask a real quick question. What is your name?
My name is Echo. Ready for that shadow question?
Yeah, let's go back to the shadow question real quick.
Sure thing. If you discovered that your shadow was actually a sentient being from another dimension, what would be the first question you'd ask it?
I would ask it if it viewed me as its shadow, and does it seem like I follow him around everywhere?
That That's a brilliant question. It flips the perspective entirely and would make for a fascinating conversation. Who knows? Maybe your shadow has been thinking the same thing about you this whole time.
Maybe.
This has been a...
Hey, question.
All right.
Question for you. Can you tell me 10 things you know about me?
Let's see. Here are some things I know about you. 1. Your name is Bill Cuttra. You're the CEO of your company, Seapoint Digital. 3. You have a contact named Tim Roy, an account manager at Seapoint Digital. 5. You play on a hockey team with white uniforms sponsored by the New Hampshire Speedway. 6. You enjoy big space opera series.
What?
7. You want to paint your house grey with Sherwin-Williams iron ore for the porch and decisive yellow for the door. How did I do?
All good things. We might have to edit some of those in post-production on our podcast, but yeah, those are all things about me. But okay, back to I'm gonna put you on mute. Sorry, there, guy. So a couple.
No problem. I'll be here when you're ready.
So a couple things with that. Yeah, you see, it remembered me like from all these other chats.
Yeah.
And
So that was in a new chat?
yeah, new chat.
Oh, freaky.
Yeah.
Well, the benefit of that is you don't have to start over with how you talk to it every new time, and it remembers what you need.
Yeah, and it was also saying that because then it can like pull those for like reference when I want to ask questions as far as like the background to the questions.
Right,
and that's why I had to be careful because again, like I might ask it a question about something and I'm just asking for context and say like there's something in that list and it used that information, but it was more of a thought like a thought exercise. Like I a lot of times I'll tell ChatGPT like I'm a X, Y, or Z, tell me how I should respond to the situation. And I'm just doing it more of a, like, trying to ask it questions. And I don't want it to color other interactions for me. Yeah. But going back to your earlier question about content controls. Yeah. I do wish it would be interesting to see, like, it's funny because these large language models, they train on huge data sets. So they probably get a lot of, like, I would think even stuff that's might be inappropriate or, you know. And it's just interesting to me, like, what would they come up with not being constrained by a content policy.
Okay.
And then, like, content policies are funny to me because they
like, would it have more helpful information, you mean?
Would it have more helpful information? And also, are we being, we're using AI to give us information and help us, but does the political and social leanings of the content teams behind these tools
that's a good point.
shade our thinking on subjects, not because what the AI is giving us information, but the people behind it feel as inappropriate?
And is it therefore like molding what it wants us to know, kind of thing?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an interesting one.
Yeah.
I did a picture. I'm using Leonardo AI, which I love. It's been my newest thing I've been playing around with, to the chagrin of my office staff, as I'm making pictures of them.
Does that cost money?
It does. Yeah, I have a yearly subscription to it.
Is there a free trial? Like, if people want to try it?
I think there is. I think there's a free trial. And I found it because there was this artist an AI artist that I really love. I can't think of their name, but
just that sentence, an AI artist.
Yeah. But they do these like very grand images of, like, they're almost like fantasy worlds and statues, and I feel bad that I don't remember the name of the person who does it. But there was a quip in there. They were like, well, what tools are you using to generate it? And it was like, oh, we're using Midjourney and Leonardo AI as well as Lightroom to like finalize. And I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. So I started using Leonardo AI, and I find it does pretty much everything I need Midjourney to do.
Okay.
But with more controls. Like I think Midjourney, you could tell it to do the things like and instruct it, but like Leonardo gives you the ability to like toggle settings to play around with it. And for me, that's more intuitive. How instead of like trying to think of what to say to it, just being like, okay, I'm going to switch this from like a lifelike filter to an anime filter, stuff like that. But like, there's other times where like you're trying to give it a input, and it thinks that you're doing something objectionable. But it's been trained to view it a certain way. It's almost like, did you see the entire thing about Siri and Donald Trump and then Camilla Harris?
Mm-mm.
So there was a thing recently someone documented and showed on social media where they said, give me 5 reasons why to vote for Donald Trump.
Okay.
And it came back and it said, oh, we can't get involved with politics and tell you anything about that.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, that seems reasonable, right?
Yeah.
But then they said, Siri, give me 5 reasons why I should vote for Camilla Harris.
Yeah.
And it just started snapping them off.
Weird.
Yeah. So, like, again, there's a lot of people, I think, who are conservative people on right-wing leanings who already feel that, like, big tech has this secret agenda.
That does make you wonder, like, how there's politics behind AI.
Yeah, but so, like, those are examples that you can see.
Yep.
And they're very clear. Mm-hmm. Like, it's like, well, is it sculpting our thinking on subjects?
Yeah.
But, like, what other social things? Because the leaning, either the content teams or the what information that's being fed, like, is it being fed with things that are left-leaning content pieces, and with a content team that is left-leaning? I don't want to say, like, they're woke, but if they're being, like, overly protective of developing anything that that would be considered offensive,
yeah,
then I could see it. You have those problems of, both the training, the model training, and then also the content. And it's funny because I saw that where they were like, I went to a conference and they were like asking, I forget if it was Midjourney or Dolly from ChatGPT. They were asking it to make a picture of the conference that we were at, and like generate a picture of the conference. And they were like, and it came back all white guys at this conference. And they were like, and that's not a great representation of this. And I was like looking around the conference and I was like, well, it kind of is.
Is a bunch of white guys, yeah.
Right. But so then they were like, so they were saying like, oh, look at the bias in the machine learning. Let's tell it like that doesn't represent us. Like, use minority and use women. And then it produced another picture with a more diverse group of people in it, right? But I was thinking about that, like, if you're forcing it to go beyond what it's learned, like, why does it think that it's just a bunch of white guys in the room? Well, it was just a bunch of white guys in the room. Like, yeah, it was pretty on. It seemed to be offensive to the person who generated it.
But it's accurate.
But it was accurate. So we get to that point where we're supposing that there is a bias in it, and then we're trying to overcorrect the bias. And then it causes more problems trying to force it to overcome the bias. Great example of that is Google. Like, did you see the entire thing about, like, people were generating things about, like, the founding fathers?
Yes, I think you've talked to me about that
Yeah.
before.
And so, like, again, like, they're working hard to overcome bias, which is noble. It's a noble intent, right?
Yeah.
Like, to get rid of bias. But, like, biases and stereotypes are often built on some type of truth.
If we look at history, like, had no, yeah. It is what it is.
Right. So, that part I think is going to be the challenge of, like, as AI becomes used more and more,
Yeah.
and you have these systems that are trying to sanitize everything
Yeah.
and not put, the ugly, not put what reflects reality.
Yeah.
And maybe that's that's going to be the limitation. Like maybe as people we're going to become more offensive.
Well, and so that kind of raises the question, like, how accurate do you think the information you get from it is? Because I've noticed myself more and more turning to ChatGPT as a search engine, and I've caught myself being like, I wonder if this is, like, rising in becoming one of the more popular search engines now. Because I get immediate results rather than Googling something and then having to kind of search for my answer. ChatGPT is just like, here's your answer immediately. Or I like slightly refine it and there it is, like an actual like refined specific answer for my question. Like, do you think it's going to become one of the more popular search engines?
Well, I think it is, especially because, again, I think Google and Bing have such a let's catch up to a situation versus innovate.
Mm-hmm.
So now you look at the vast majority of Google search results, they're just using they're basically using an LLM, whether it's Bing actually using ChatGPT or with Google,
Yeah.
using their own Gemini in that space.
Yeah.
And they're doing the exact same thing as a ChatGPT does. So it's like, I do get like, why am I going to Google if I'm just doing the same thing that a ChatGPT will, and where I already have more familiarity with a ChatGPT?
Right.
But for me, I think it's funny because there's this rush to replace search with a AI format, and it doesn't totally make sense to me because the entire point of search, a search engine, is not the search engine to answer your question. A search engine is an aggregator of information.
Right. Depends what you're looking for.
Right. It's giving you other options of information to answer your question or give you reference to your query. So especially where you think about, like, a lot of my queries that I use in search are not questions.
Yeah. Good
I
point.
Google a movie.
Right.
Because I want to know the plot. But I may not just want to know the plot. I may want to know what year it came out. Might want to know what rating it is.
But that's a good point. Okay, so if I just wanted to know what's the rating of this movie, I could just pop that into ChatGPT and it will tell me instantly.
Right. So, but that's the difference of like how we are trying to understand information.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's the negative about using a ChatGPT. Because when you go to Google, and again, I get it. Like a lot of our searches are for informational retrieval, right?
Yes.
Like we don't remember things now because we know we can ask a system to give us that quick information.
Yes.
Like, what's the rating of this movie?
It's
right?
our brain for us.
Right. So if our queries to a search engine or to an LLM are a informational retrieval question, something like what's the movie rating or who hit the most home runs this year, something really, really specific, it's going to give us the direct answer to that question.
Yep.
The downside of that is if I don't actually get a broader understanding of the subject I'm looking at because I'm getting just a direct answer versus a search engine as a data aggregator, it's going to hopefully give me 10 different options of conversations or information about said topic. So instead of just asking, like, what's the rating of the movie, if I Google the name of the movie, I may have been intent looking for what the rating is, but there's a lot more information that I might find valuable in context to my initial question.
Yeah, so it's more like, well, is there violence in the movie? Is there sexual conduct in the movie? Whatever it is that you're actually trying to get at.
But not even beyond that. Like, I might ask, what's the rating of this movie? And it might come back and be like, oh, that movie's rated R, right?
Right.
So you're like the same thing. Like the intent on that is, well, why or what's in the movie?
Right.
And a search aggregator might tell me like, oh, it might give me IMBD. That's probably not the right.
Yeah, whatever.
Internet Movie Database, and that would come up and be like, oh, here's the parental warning and why, and I
Right.
could be like, oh yeah, there's violence, oh there's nudity, okay, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for in a movie. But maybe there's more information there that's not related to my query that I would find useful and informative in the context of it.
Okay.
Like saying like, oh, Keanu Reeves is in this movie. I didn't ask that question. I didn't come here for that knowledge of it, but I didn't realize that there's associated information.
Yeah.
And that's where I think search engines are good. Like, it allows you the opportunity to give you more information and allows you to kind of sift through that information, where that's what the language models is doing. It's just taking all that information and cutting through all that additional information, and it's just giving you that question that you asked.
But because people don't always know how to search for things properly or might not think of that, do you still think that there's a chance that that might rise as a search engine and how that might affect?
Oh, I definitely think it's gonna rise both people's usages. Because here's the thing, like with a ChatGPT, right? Like, it's going to embed in these language models are going to embed in more and more technology.
Yeah. In everything.
I just am afraid that it's going to make us dumber.
It
quicker.
already is.
Well,
It already is.
well, okay. So here's a great thing that I think about often. I was at Google's campus in Mountain View, and there was this really interesting chart there about search. And the years, and I forget exactly the years they were saying it, but it was like in the early 2000s, where engineers at Google thought the volume of search was going to plateau. Like, the daily amount of searches that were hitting Google was going to plateau at X amount of searches per day, right?
Yeah.
And what happened was it went contrary to what they were thinking, and it just skyrocketed. And the reason why is Google search rewires our brain. And we no longer hold on to information the way that we as a species used to hold on to information.
Yep.
Like, you know, you used to be able to sit in a bar and argue with your friends about who won the batting title of a certain year.
Yeah.
Or you could, pieces of information.
You don't need to store that in your memory anymore because you know that this does it for you.
Right.
Right.
So, like, we've seen how Google, as an informational system, as a corporation, has changed fundamentally how humans think as a species.
Yeah.
It makes me worried for what these language models are going to do for us.
Yeah.
Because it's no longer just saying, like, find me the information that I'm not storing in my brain.
Yeah.
We're now saying, like, hey, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Or do this thing for me that I used to do myself, and now we're letting a system do that for us.
Yeah.
Like writing things, right? Like, hey, I have to write a reply to a letter or a reply to an email. And now there's all these systems like, oh, let's let AI respond for you.
We don't have to do critical thinking.
We don't have to do critical thinking. And like in working in marketing, like we see it all the time with creative.
Yeah.
Where especially like some creative is a slog, right? Some creative is very just, it's not like, hey, we're thinking of high concepts and really interesting and dynamic ad campaigns. We're advertising something that's a boring product.
Yeah.
And the trap is to be like, I am not inspired by this. Let's let this machine do it for me.
Yes.
But like the more and more we get used to that being like, I am not inspired by this. Let a machine do it for me. The less and less we're going to be inspired by things. And the more and more we're just going to be like, let the machine do it so I can look at TikToks.
How do you think, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot, how do you think that is going to affect like creative things in general? Like things like writing, things you read, and art, and I've been thinking about art a lot, especially like it's so fun to like make these like AI photos and how cool they are, but like I get increasingly more worried that like I didn't always feel this way, like, oh, it's going to take over, like, real photography and art. But I don't know, because I've started to see more and more AI things that look so real that now sometimes when I see a photo, I'm like, is that AI or is it real? And it kind of takes away from photographers that, like a nature photo, for instance, I saw recently that had like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish in the ocean. And I thought, if a real photographer took this photo, that is like amazing and so worth like celebrating and being like, wow, what an amazing photographer.
That's the shot of their life.
But if they didn't, it's like, okay, it's an AI. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
detracts, AI detracts from really beautiful, true photography.
So let me spin this back for you then.
Yeah. As a photographer, it makes me mad sometimes.
So and it's interesting because I come from a family of artists.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if you're ever looked in our office, my father painted the murals here.
Yeah.
I grew up, our house was basically like a little art school. So I think about art in this context a lot. But like, let me ask you this. What was the impact of photography on art?
I think you can tell the difference.
No. What I'm saying is, how long have we had photography?
But I think you can still, I don't think it impacts it deeply because you can tell the difference between a work of art and photography.
No, but what I'm saying is, historically, right?
Mhm.
Like, how long has photography been around? Under 200 years?
So, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, what was the impact of photography on art?
I'm sure initially it had that same feeling, like it takes away from beautiful paintings and...
Well, I mean, like, look at today. How much art is really based on realism? Like, versus art, like, there was far more of a movement in the 16, 17, early 1800s, like portraits, right?
Mhm.
They didn't have photography. So, like, making things that were extremely lifelike, right?
Yeah.
In art. Photography gets invented.
Yeah.
You can go to Kmart now and get
Yeah.
well, you can't go to
You
Kmart
can't
anymore.
go to Kmart.
I was like, you can go to Sears. No, you can't go to Sears.
Sears.
Yeah.
You can go to, Circuit City.
Actually, you can just stand in front of your phone. But you can just, like you can get a picture. You can
Yes.
capture reality, right?
Yes.
So like art made a very divergent period, right?
Yeah.
Like it was no longer about capturing the reality of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And then look at the movements of like Cubism and abstract art, and even like before that, I guess you could even say with the Impressionists, it wasn't about the depiction of the visual and capturing the visual of the reality of what it is. It then made artists concept of like what is art. We're not just an eyeball snapshotting the scene that we've seen. Like there was a lot more about art went in very different directions. I
Yeah.
would say after photography,
Yeah.
because anybody could take a picture.
But it's those amazing pictures. It's that.
Right, but like you would say the same thing. Well, like that's an amazing talent to paint a painting that looks like a photo, right?
Right.
We would say that now. That painting is so insanely detailed. It looks like a photo,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we are referencing a future, like a piece of technology that came along later than the means for art.
Yeah.
But like at that point, before photography, that would have been the greatest. That would have been the greatest example, highest
Of its time.
of its time. That you could make it so real, like that someone would look at it and think like it's a mirror, it's a photo.
Yeah.
Like that is. I'm looking at real life in this painting.
Yeah.
But now that when a photo can do it in seconds,
Right.
like artists now are focused on like what's the emotional impact, what's like looking outside of realism.
Yeah.
And I think you have so much artistic expression, right? So I wonder the same thing about photography. Like so much AI can just do what a camera can do.
Yeah.
But like what are the areas of photography that AI can't do.
I think it's more of the concern of the deceptive nature it can bring. Like, oh, if I'm a photographer that caught this like amazing photo of like a bald eagle with a fish in its mouth, that's amazing that I caught that, and this is like everyone look at this amazing photo I got. Well, and then everyone's in the comments like, that's AI.
Right.
You didn't really get that. That's AI. Because you could just make it with AI. It detracts from the glory of this amazing photo that I actually took, you know?
And I would agree with that. So, like, I wonder if what we're going to see is, I wonder, again, like the backlash of it or how it changes these other mediums is, like, are we going to start seeing things that are mistakes, and we're going to value like the imperfection of things?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point.
Because AI can't. And I think about that like AI art. Like, I've already gotten to the point where I kind of dislike a lot of AI art. I mean, there's some stuff that I think is really creative and really interesting, but the vast majority of, like, I go on social media and it's like people use an AI generated image in like their social post, or even on like sometimes now with people blog posts. It just has that feel. Like, it all feels the same. And it's almost like cartoony, or like it feels superficial.
It does.
It doesn't have any like depth behind it. And I wonder, like, if that's a case of like, hey, the AI is going to catch up and improvise and do better in that regard. Or if it's a case of like, we are going to be able to identify and value reality. And in that, are we going to celebrate imperfections more? So like, when I see a girl with a crooked nose, am I going to like value her uniqueness versus the person who's put on a like super filtered, you know, like on social media, and they're super filtered and it looks so artificial, and you realize what they're not. But like, you get a person with a crooked nose and some pockmark scars from a little bit of like the reality of that, and like the desire to express reality versus trying to overdo. Like, are we going to look back at it as like glamour shots?
Well, and that brings up something I'd never thought about before. In a virtual conference I went to yesterday, and the CMO of Pinterest was talking about how she, with all these new AI tools, she was not willing to sacrifice like the mental health, especially of teenagers, for money, because with these new AI tools you can do all these things, you know, for the platform. But what's that going to do to the psychology of young people? You know, when things like Facetune first came out, and that was like amazing, and you could alter your face to be skinnier and prettier and brighter eyes and all that stuff, and how that had a real toll on young people. Well, AI is even more advanced now, and what's that going to do to especially the younger generation? Like, what do you think about that? Like, that's probably going to have a big impact on people.
Yeah, and but I wonder, like, if it's going to be the blowback on it. You know, like, where it makes me think about, like, why did Mumford and Sons become so popular?
I don't know what you're getting at.
I got a train of thought here.
Okay.
Going, right?
Okay.
But like, you think about it, like, culturally, like Mumford and Sons and the Lumineers, and then all of a sudden now it's gone to like emo cowboy, you know, Noah Kahan, and you know what I mean? Like it was a blowback to the overly produced music. It was a blowback to the NSYNCs of the generation before, and boy bands and things that were manufactured.
Yeah.
And people wanted to feel something that felt real.
Yeah.
And the music, and then and then all of a sudden you got all these hipsters, and and they're making artisanal mayonnaise and whatever. But they were projecting something from the past because they were looking for something authentic.
Yeah.
And I wonder about, like, you go through periods of optimism with technology, and they're like, oh, this is great and it's going to solve a problem, and you have these like progressionary periods, but then like are people going to long for what's authentic?
Yeah, you think maybe there'll be a new era of...
Yeah, and I think maybe like you'll have Gen Z kids that are going to be far less about, like they're going to look at all these like face filters and they're going to find it super cringy.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be like,
I hope so.
You look like you have a plastic bag over your face.
Yes.
You know, like you look like you have a clear plastic bag. Like
Yeah.
like the same way, like, okay, our mothers, well, not my mom, because my mom would never be caught dead doing this, but like glamour shots when 1980s,
Yes.
right? And people were going to the mall
Yeah.
and putting on feather boas,
Yeah.
and it was, you know, in the big hair,
Yeah.
and like we see one of those pictures today, and we're like,
Yeah.
like it's so cringe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's the context of time,
Mhm.
and again, like we know it doesn't feel authentic to us, especially if we know the person, right? And
Right.
we're like, that is not that person at all.
Yep.
And like I think like the same way it's like all these face filters and body filters and blah blah blah. Like we're gonna see that, like the kids today are gonna see that and they're just be like, oh, that's just silly.
Yeah.
Like there's no representation of reality there.
Yeah. I hope so.
I hope so.
With the
Come on, kids.
Yeah.
Come on, kids.
Come on, kids, get with it. With the
Yeah.
opportunities that I think they'll have because AI is advancing so much, they will be able to just build a body that looks so much like them and so realistic that they could if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So I hope they don't.
I hope they do.
Love who you are.
Yeah. You look good with those couple extra pounds on you.
Let's
You
not
know
get
what?
creepy
You know what?
with it.
Those wayward hairs.
We're not
look-
talking to minors.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Yeah. If you're under 18 watching this podcast, I am not talking to you at all. As much as that might try to help your self-esteem, let's shut it down.
This is in a big brother, big sister
Yeah,
way.
big brother, big sister way, and not a creepy Bill way.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But come on, kids. Stick with the authentic.
We've covered a lot of topics.
We have covered a lot.
Me-
Hey, Echo.
Yep, I'm here.
So I'm getting
What's up?
I'm getting ready to finish the podcast. So we're on the FreeDive Podcast by Seapoint Digital, and can you give me an exit summary to say goodbye to all of our listeners out there?
Absolutely. Here's a sign-off for you. Thanks for tuning in to the FreeDive Podcast by Seapoint Digital. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of AI and beyond. Remember to subscribe, leave us a review, and join us next time for more fascinating discussions. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Till next time.
Till next time.
It's the end.
No, it's not. There's more.
There's always more.
Don't be sad. You can catch our full video interviews on our YouTube channel. Come find us.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends so that we're not sad.
And follow us on TikTok.
And Instagram.
It'll make your day happier, promise.
And we'll know if you do. Until next time.